We live in a world that glorifies sharing. Social media, self-help books, and even our closest circles often tell us that vulnerability is strength, and it is. But there's a fine line between being courageously open and handing out our deepest wounds like free samples at a grocery store. Not everyone deserves access to the most tender parts of you. Your deepest insecurities, the ones that keep you up at night, the ones that whisper doubts into your mind, those are not meant for public consumption. It's easy to believe that sharing everything will bring us closer to people, that spilling our fears, weaknesses, and self-doubts will make us more relatable, more loved, more understood. But the truth is, not everyone will hold your insecurities with care. Some will weaponize them. Some will dismiss them. And worst of all, some will pretend to understand while secretly judging you. Vulnerability is a gift, but it should be given wisely to those who have earned the right to hear your story. Think of your insecurities like a delicate plant. When nurtured in a safe environment, they can transform into growth, resilience, even wisdom. But if exposed too soon to harsh conditions, criticism, indifference, or shallow understanding, they wither. We've all had moments when we opened up too quickly, only to feel regret afterward. Maybe it was an overshare in a group setting or a confession to someone who didn't truly see us. That feeling of exposure, of wishing we could take back our words, is a sign that we shared something sacred with the wrong audience. This doesn't mean we should live in isolation or bottle up our struggles. On the contrary, real connection is built on honesty. But discernment is key. Ask yourself, is this person capable of holding space for me without judgment? Have they shown me through actions, not just words, that they are trustworthy? If the answer is no, then maybe your deepest fears and wounds aren't meant for them. Not everyone deserves to hear your battle scars. Some people just like to stare at them. There's also a danger in defining ourselves by our insecurities. If we constantly broadcast our fears, I'm not good enough, I always mess things up, I'll never be loved, we reinforce those beliefs in our own minds. Words have power. When we repeat our insecurities too often, we don't just expose them to others, we give them more weight in our own hearts. We start living as if they are the truth rather than just passing thoughts. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is to sit with our insecurities quietly, to process them in safe spaces, and to challenge them without needing an audience. It's also worth noting that some people thrive on hearing about others' struggles, not out of empathy, but out of comparison. There are those who will listen to your insecurities, not to support you, but to feel better about themselves. We've all encountered people who subtly diminish our pain, who respond with a dismissive, "That's nothing, you should hear what happened to me." These are not the people who deserve access to your rawness. Be selective. Choose the ones who lean in with understanding, who don't rush to fix or compare, but who simply hold space for you. At the heart of this is self-respect. Keeping some things private isn't about secrecy, it's about self-preservation. There's a certain dignity in holding your pain close until you find the right person, the right moment, the right way to share it. Just because we live in a world of oversharing doesn't mean we have to participate. Not everything needs a public audience. Some truths are meant to be whispered in safe spaces, not broadcasted for applause or pity. So, the next time you feel the urge to bare your soul in a moment of vulnerability, pause. Ask yourself, am I sharing this because I trust this person or because I need validation? Will this conversation lead to healing or just temporary relief followed by regret? Your deepest insecurities are not a community project. They are part of you, and you get to decide who is worthy of hearing them. Choose wisely. Dreams are fragile when they're just beginning to form, like clay that is still soft, still malleable, still unsure of what it wants to become. They're not fully baked yet. And when we share them too early, too widely, or with the wrong people, we risk letting those dreams be shaped, or worse, shattered by hands that don't know how to hold them with care. It's tempting to want validation right away. We want someone to say, yes, go for it. That's amazing. You were born to do this. But not everyone is capable of seeing your vision, especially when it's still in its early, uncertain stage. Sometimes we share our dreams with people out of habit, friends, family, coworkers, expecting support. But what we often get is skepticism, projection, or dismissal. That's not realistic. How are you going to make money doing that? You're not really the type for that. And it's not always malicious. Sometimes it's their fear talking, not yours. Their limitations, not your potential. People speak from their own experiences, their own stories, and if they've never chased a dream themselves, or worse, if they gave up on theirs, they may not know how to hold space for yours. When we hand over our dreams too soon, we're inviting critique before we've built the confidence to withstand it. Imagine planting a seed and then asking everyone around you whether it's going to grow. Some will say yes, some will say no, and some will step right on it. If you're not grounded yet, those opinions can uproot what you're trying to nurture. You might abandon the dream not because it wasn't possible, but because someone else couldn't see it. Your dream doesn't need universal approval to be valid. It only needs your commitment. There's also a vulnerability in dreaming. When we name what we want out loud to someone else, we are admitting that we care deeply, that we have hopes, that we're reaching for something. And that kind of honesty is brave. But bravery doesn't mean recklessness. You don't walk into battle unarmored. In the same way, you don't expose your heart's desire to people who haven't earned the right to hear it. Some dreams are meant to be protected in silence until they're strong enough to survive the noise. We have to be selective about our dream circle, the small, trusted group of people who not only believe in us, but also respect our process. These are the people who won't laugh when your dream sounds ridiculous, who won't offer unsolicited advice before asking questions, and who won't try to mold your vision into something more palatable for them. They'll sit with you in the uncertainty, they'll cheer you on without needing to understand every detail, and they'll remind you of your why when you're starting to forget. One of the most dangerous things we can do is hand our dream to someone who sees the world through a lens of fear. That kind of person will clip your wings under the guise of protecting you. They'll say they're being realistic or cautious or just looking out for you. But underneath that is often their own discomfort with risk, their own regret for not chasing something when they had the chance. They're not trying to hurt you, but they will, because their fear will become your inner critic if you let it. Guard against that. And sometimes we sabotage ourselves by oversharing too soon. There's a high that comes from telling someone what we're going to do. We feel seen, validated, maybe even praised. But then the actual work becomes less urgent, less exciting. The energy we could have spent building gets drained by the approval seeking. Talking about the dream can feel like doing it, but it's not the same. There's power in the quiet hustle, in letting your actions speak long before your words ever do. So hold your dream close, nurture it in private, build the foundation before you invite an audience. And when you do choose to share it, do it with intention. Ask, will this person water the seed or trample it? Do they want to understand, or are they just waiting to weigh in? Your dream is a sacred thing. It deserves protection, not performance. Trust yourself enough to know that not everyone has to understand it, and not everyone is meant to. Pain is a powerful force. It demands attention, reshapes our inner world, and leaves behind impressions that linger long after the moment has passed. But pain is also incredibly vulnerable. When we rush to expose it before it's ready, before we've had a chance to understand it, we risk compounding the hurt. There's a time for openness and sharing, but there's also a time for quiet, sacred protection. Healing isn't a public event. It's a private unfolding. Your pain deserves to be honored, not hurried. There's a strange pressure in our culture to make meaning out of suffering immediately. We hear things like, everything happens for a reason, or turn your pain into purpose. And while those sentiments might eventually feel true, they are dangerous when offered too soon. Pain doesn't need to be useful the moment it arrives. It doesn't need to be transformed into art, activism, or inspiration before you've even had a chance to grieve. Protecting your pain means allowing it to exist without needing to explain it away. Too often, we feel obligated to narrate our wounds before we've fully lived through them. We think if we can package the pain, wrap it in a good story, deliver it with a neat moral, it will be easier to carry. But the truth is, unprocessed pain can't be translated clearly. It comes out jagged, reactive, raw. And when we share it too early, we open ourselves to interpretations and feedback that we may not be ready to receive. Healing requires tenderness, not scrutiny. Think of pain like a deep cut. You don't expose it to the elements right away. You clean it gently, you cover it, you let it scab and scar in private. In the same way, emotional wounds need time in safe, sheltered spaces. They need solitude, stillness, and a sense of safety before they're strong enough to be shared. Some pain doesn't want an audience. It wants presence, your own attention, and it wants patience. There's also a risk in sharing pain with people who haven't done their own healing. Unhealed people may invalidate, minimize, or even compete with your suffering. They might say things like, "You think that's bad?" or "You should be over that by now." These responses aren't just unhelpful, they're harmful. They teach you to distrust your own feelings, to question the legitimacy of your experience. Protecting your pain means setting boundaries with people who aren't equipped to meet you in your sorrow. And sometimes the person who pushes us to share too soon is ourselves. We think talking about it will bring relief, and sometimes it does, but only if we're sharing in the right space with the right intention. If we speak from a place of desperation or a need to be fixed, we may walk away feeling more broken than before. Silence isn't weakness. It's often the most courageous response we can give while we're still sorting through the mess inside. It's okay to be a work in progress in private. Protecting your pain also means resisting the urge to perform healing. Just because others expect you to bounce back doesn't mean you have to. Just because someone says, "Aren't you better yet?" doesn't mean you are. There's no timeline. There's no rule book. Healing is not linear, and it doesn't need to be impressive. You don't owe anyone an update. You don't have to turn every heartbreak into a teachable moment. Some things are meant to stay sacred and quiet until you're truly ready to speak. When that readiness comes, you'll know. It won't feel like urgency or pressure. It'll feel like release, like peace, like the story finally settling into your bones in a way that makes sense. Until then, let your pain breathe without performance. Let it unfold without explanation. It is yours to carry, yours to care for, and yours to heal on your terms. Protect it the way you would protect something sacred, because it is. Love, in its purest form, is intimate. It's two people learning the shape of each other's hearts. Not for show, not for approval, but because they choose to. And yet, in today's world, we often feel pressure to perform our love. We post curated moments, share relationship milestones with strangers, and sometimes seek feedback on issues that don't belong in a group chat. But love isn't a reality show. It doesn't need an audience. It needs safety, softness, and the freedom to grow without the glare of too many eyes. There's a sacredness in keeping love private, especially in its early stages. Love is delicate when it's new. Like a flame, it needs protection from the wind, not a crowd standing around asking if it's burning bright enough. The moment we open our love stories up for commentary, we give others permission to shape something they don't fully understand. And while advice can sometimes be helpful, more often it becomes noise, noise that drowns out the voice of your own relationship. We tend to confuse visibility with validation. If our love is seen, liked, and approved of, then it must be real. But love doesn't need proof. It's not strengthened by how many people celebrate it online. In fact, the more we perform our love for others, the more we risk building it on performance rather than authenticity. A love that's constantly explained, defended, or compared is a love that becomes more about perception than connection. And perception changes with every outside opinion. When challenges arise, and they always do, it's easy to run to friends, to post vague quotes online, to share our side of the story and seek comfort and sympathy. But every time we do that, we invite judgment into something that's meant to be held with tenderness. Friends, even well-meaning ones, can influence how we see our partner, how we handle conflict, and how we feel about our relationship. And once others weigh in, it's hard to unhear their voices. What is once between you and your partner becomes clouded with the expectations and values of others. Privacy in love doesn't mean secrecy, it means respect. It means understanding that some things are too precious to be passed around. The quiet rituals, the private jokes, the honest conversations after midnight. These are the moments that build intimacy. They don't need commentary. They don't need to be shared to be real. In fact, keeping them to yourself can deepen their meaning. You're allowed to hold parts of your love story close, to protect them from the distortion that comes from too many opinions. Love requires trust, not just in each other, but in the container you create together. When that container is solid, when it's not constantly punctured by public opinion, it can hold everything: joy, disappointment, growth, and even pain. But if every argument is recounted to others, if every decision is put up for review, the container starts to leak. You may still be in love, but you're no longer just building a relationship with each other, you're managing a narrative for everyone else. This doesn't mean you should isolate or never seek support. Sometimes we need guidance or a safe space to process. But there's a difference between confiding in someone who holds your relationship with care and venting to a crowd that doesn't know the whole story. Choose your confidants wisely. Make sure they want to see your relationship grow, not just entertain your pain. Make sure they love you both, not just their role as your sounding board. At the end of the day, your love story belongs to you. It deserves to unfold in privacy, at its own pace, without commentary from the sidelines. Let it be messy, sacred, imperfect, and yours. Protect it not because it's weak, but because it's worth protecting. You don't need to prove it, you just need to live it. Because real love, the kind that lasts, doesn't need an audience, it needs a home. There's a misconception that setting boundaries means shutting people out, being harsh, or building emotional walls. But the truth is, boundaries aren't about exclusion, they're about protection. They're not there to keep others away, they're there to keep you whole. A boundary says, this is where I end and you begin. And that's not a rejection of others. It's a declaration of self-respect. In a world that constantly pulls at us, demands access to our time, our energy, our emotions, boundaries are the safety nets that keep us from unraveling. Boundaries allow love and connection to flourish, not choke. Without them, relationships become murky. We start saying yes when we mean no, agreeing to things we resent, giving more than we have to give. Eventually, that leads to burnout, bitterness, and disconnection. Ironically, the very things we're trying to protect, closeness, harmony, intimacy, get destroyed because we didn't have the courage to draw a line. Boundaries don't damage relationships, they define them. They say, here's how I can show up fully without losing myself. Too often we confuse people pleasing with kindness. We believe that saying yes makes us good, generous, selfless. But kindness that costs your peace isn't kindness, it's compliance. And compliance breeds quiet resentment. The person who constantly gives without limit becomes exhausted, invisible even. They disappear behind their own unwillingness to say, this doesn't work for me. Boundaries are the way back to yourself. They are a reclamation of your needs, your voice, your time. It takes courage to set boundaries, especially if you weren't raised in a culture or family that modeled them. If you were taught that love means self-sacrifice or that your needs are secondary, then saying no can feel like betrayal. But let's be clear, honoring your boundaries isn't a betrayal of others, it's a commitment to truth. It's choosing honesty over resentment. And the people who truly love you, they won't just accept your boundaries. They'll appreciate them because they'll get the best, most authentic version of you in return. Boundaries aren't one size fits all. They're personal, nuanced, and ever evolving. What you needed last year might not serve you today. Maybe you need more time alone. Maybe you need to stop answering messages late at night. Maybe you need to pause a friendship that no longer feels mutual. That doesn't make you cold or selfish. It makes you self-aware. Boundaries aren't rigid walls. They're breathable, flexible frameworks that evolve with you. They're less about saying go away and more about saying here's how we can stay close without hurting each other. It's important to remember that boundaries are not about control. They're about clarity. They're not ultimatums. They're not punishments. They're just honest expressions of what helps you thrive. When we communicate our limits with kindness and consistency, we give others the information they need to love us well. And if someone refuses to respect those boundaries, it doesn't mean you're asking for too much. It means they're not willing to offer what's required for a healthy relationship. There will always be people who don't like your boundaries, people who benefited from your lack of them. They might call you difficult, distant, dramatic. Let them. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. Every time you uphold a boundary, you're teaching the world how to treat you. You're also showing others that it's okay to protect their own peace. In a world that glorifies overextension, boundary setting is a radical act of self-trust. Ultimately, boundaries are not barriers to connection. They're bridges to deeper, healthier relationships. They make room for reciprocity, for honesty, for for real intimacy. Because when you don't have to twist yourself to be loved, when you can be fully seen and still honored, that's when love becomes safe. That's when you feel held, not used. Boundaries don't push people away. They show you who's willing to walk beside you in a way that honors both of your truths. And that's where real connection begins.